Hello, and welcome back to the Missed Your Trigger podcast, the Magic the Gathering podcast by casuals for casuals. I'm your host, Steven, and I'm by myself tonight, but we're still going to have a good time. Real quick, we just saw at the time of this recording that our main social media site, Facebook, is over 40 likes. Thank y'all so much for the support. I hope everybody's enjoying the content so far, and if you have any suggestions, please don't forget to email us at mytcast@gmail.com, comment on our Facebook page, like our page, and like the posts that we do. But just wanted to give a special shout out to all the viewers because we saw where we got so many likes so far. So today on the Mr. Trigger podcast, we're going to be diving back into the Casuals Toolkit. Last episode, if you didn't hear it, go ahead and take a listen back to it. We talked about being patient as one of the main topic of that part of the Casuals Toolkit. And today we're getting back into it. And so without further ado, let's shuffle up and get into our main topic. So today's main topic of the Casuals Toolkit, and just to reiterate what the Casuals Toolkit is, it's a set of abilities or personality traits that can help you become a better Magic player and also a better human, which is one of the main goals we have here at Mr. Trigger. If you're not familiar with it, go back to episode 2 again, and we explain a lot about it there, and we explain all the different steps. The step we're going over today is about being receptive. So being receptive, in a definition term, is being able to take something from the outside world and applying it to your everyday life. This is very true in Magic the Gathering. It's almost crucial to becoming a better player, a better pod mate, what have you. This conversation comes up because of the pre-release that I recently went to that we posted about on Facebook. And while we're talking about pre-release, if you are in the Greenville, North Carolina area, or even if you're an hour or two away from Greenville, North Carolina, I would highly, highly suggest that you take a visit to Blue Ox Games in Greenville, North Carolina. They are an amazing game store. They hold Magic events all the time. Just an amazing staff, very knowledgeable people that work there. The owner is a super great guy, very down to earth. He's actually their tier 2 judge, I believe. If he's listening, he'll correct me later. But just an awesome place to go play. And being receptive, that quality that we're talking about actually came to me while I was at pre-release. This is the part of the Casuals Toolkit I wanted to get into, that tool we're going to put into that bag today. Because that's one of the best places to network. And it's one of the best places to meet new people and play different styles. If you've never been to a pre-release period, basically what happens is you get a box of 6 booster packs. You open all these packs and you build a limited deck off of those booster packs. If you're not super familiar with limited, stay tuned for one of our next Red Eye Fight episodes. I plan on doing a little bit of limited in that episode, and I'll try and explain it while we're going through it. But during these events, there's a lot of people who are going to these LGSs, going to their local game stores all the time, where us as casuals might not have that much time on our hands. We have full-time jobs, we have families, we're in school, things of that nature. And being receptive struck me kind of hard that day because even as a hardcore casual, I still struggle sometimes with being receptive to, people coming into my comfort zone and, them telling me what they feel like I should do or giving me a helping hand. And it's something you constantly struggle with. In Magic, you have this sense of pride a lot of times that you feel like you have to do it on your own, or you have to, you have to come up with this brand new idea. We talked a little bit about it in deck building last week. That's not always the case. There are people out there that know things you don't know, and there are people out there who just have played the game longer. So we've got some bullet points we're going to go over today about being receptive. And it starts with actually gameplay during a game of Magic the Gathering. The rulings for this game are so extensive. There's so much in-depth stuff that goes into this game that we love so much. It's very easy for people to miss or forget different parts of the game. Don't be afraid to lean on other people if there's a particular type of gameplay style that they see you doing that they've done before and said, hey, maybe you want to stack your triggers this way. You might be missing those triggers like we do a lot, but listen to those people that come in to try and help you, because at the end of the day, we're not perfect. None of us are. The professional players make mistakes all the time. So make sure you're listening to those people, even your pet deck. So perfect example is me. I love elves. That's my tribe. I'm always going to be an elf person, and I feel like I've figured out a lot of synergies with that deck. But anytime I sit across from somebody who is also an elf player, I try and bring in whatever they're saying and listen to what they're doing. Again, one night at the Blue Ox, we were playing Pauper, as everybody knows, one of my favorite formats. And I sat across, we played, me and another player played a mirror match of elves. And I watched this player play, and, he would kind of give me pointers about what he does. And at first I was, kind of standoffish, as a lot of us may be when we get new information inside. And I was kind of like, nah, I think I like the way I run. I like the way I run my elves. I'm good. I'm fine. But looking back, I realized he was a really good player, and he had a lot of really good ideas that he used in his deck that I myself could have used, and eventually did make some changes in my deck. And also that same night, we had one of the workers there at the Blue Ox came up and was like, hey, y'all know y'all both should be running this card just so you can play this mirror match. And we both kind of looked up and were like, huh. And we realized that somebody else had played this format before and knows that it's a format staple that neither one of us knew. And it took being receptive to those things to change my gameplay and become that better player for that particular night and for that particular format. Taking a quick step back to episode 2, we talked about being patient in deck building, and we know there are certain parts of this game that are going to be a little redundant. Hence, everything kind of falls back on everything else. You have to do some of these things related to gameplay, and then you have to do some of these things related to deck building. Same thing goes for being receptive. And the main part that comes in with that pre-release, and the thing that I cannot thank my local game store, and feel so fortunate that I live close enough to be able to travel to my local game store at any time, is during pre-release, a lot of the veteran players who go to every pre-release, play draft nights, play Friday Night Magics all the time, you actually sit down and you'll get your pre-release deck put together, play your 2 games, because the one we do is a traditional style where you play best of 3. And a lot of times they'll look at you and be like, I really like the idea you've got going on. Do you mind if I look at your rest of your sealed cards and see what you can do better on? And at first this seems very invasive. You're sitting there across the table and you're just like, this is a competitive game and I want to do it on my own. But listen to them. Hand them all your cards and they'll look through them for you and they'll say, maybe this isn't your first match, and they'll say, well, hey, somebody on my last sealed event my last sealed game was playing this card, and this is why. They may have seen something that you didn't. They may just understand that format better. A lot of limited players actually study and research the archetypes and the good decks that are going to come out of this sealed limited format, and they might have the leg up on you in that sense. And like I said, even the other night at sealed, the pre-release, I was kind of standoffish to start with. As casual as I am and as normally as open as I am, I was kind of like, well, I'm really proud of what I built. I feel like I took a pile of cards that wasn't all that great, and I feel like I did something with them. And to add on a quick side note, this doesn't have to do specifically with being receptive, but I realized in my pools for that pre-release, I got some not so great pools. There were people across from me pulling the Constellation Art Demigods and the Nylia, and it was just, I would sit across from these cards and I was like, oh. If anybody looked at the Facebook post I posted after pre-release, my Satyr Lord was actually the best card I'd pulled during pre-release, and I didn't really have enough Satyr synergy to make that card work really well. Just remember, it'll be your turn next time. You'll get a better pre-release that next time. And just don't look so much at what they're doing. Look at your cards and make those cards work for you. a lot of times pre-release is pre-release and draft both are kind of like Pauper. You actually end up pulling a lot of common cards together with a couple of big bruisers or a couple of big bomb cards, they're called, and making a good synergistic deck that goes off at some point. So going back to the main topic, I felt like I need to say something about that because I did not so much salty, but I caught myself looking and saying, man, I wish I could have had a better pre-release pool. But at the end of the day, enjoy your cards, they're your cards, and have fun with them. But getting back to these players opposite you helping you build these decks. The first gentleman I played at the pre-release, said, he said the same thing I was just talking about. Let me see your cards. And he actually looked through my stuff, and I didn't realize it that I was running under the, optimum number of creatures, especially in a Gruul set, trying to play an aggro style thing. And he was like, I see where you're kind of counting this as a creature, but you never know if those are actually going to land, so you may want to put some more creatures in your deck. And I did. The next couple games still didn't go very well, but it was still, it took a lot for me to just say, okay, yeah, I'll listen to whatever you have to say and try and apply it, while still keeping a semblance of that pride that you put this deck together and you came up with these synergies. And then after game 2, I went to my next match and played the new deck and, got a little screwed up on my mana. Excuses aside, I did really poorly, really, really poorly, and ended up in game 2, I mulliganed to 5 and had no lands. It was horrible. My opponent felt so bad for me. We finished so quickly that he actually said, okay, this archetype's not working for you. Let's break everything down. Let's look in your sealed pool and see what you had. And he had noticed, he was like, man, I can't believe you're not running black because you have so much removal. And I looked through the cards and I was like, I definitely missed that, and I didn't realize how much I had. And I feel really bad that I didn't even get to take his advice. I played one extra, kind of exhibition match with him after, our official matches, and he had a really good run with his deck, and he felt, it was so funny, I could see the look on his face, he felt so bad, because he had just helped me tear this deck completely down, make it whole and new, and he kind of stomped me again. And it goes back to just, we all have those nights. But it took me a minute or two, but I became more and more receptive to people wanting to change the things about my deck that I did put a lot of pride into and felt like I'd done a really good job putting together. But I let those two different players crack my decks open, give me advice, and it's made me a better player for it. It's going to make me think about the next pre-release I go to. Maybe I look and say, hey, last time I missed this, let me pay a little bit better, closer attention as I'm reading these cards. And, that, it takes a real big ego check. And that's the next little thing we're going to talk about is it's real easy in this game to get an inflated ego, to get a little big for your britches. Don't let that happen to you. Don't be too big to admit that you are not necessarily wrong, but that someone else may be better than you. There are several players at my local game store that almost always go undefeated in pre-release, draft. They're just very good limited players. They're very good players overall. And those people normally are very willing to say, hey, let me help you out. Go to those people when you go to these pre-releases, when you put your little deck together. Look at them and say, hey, would you mind looking at my cards? Is there something else I can do? Most of the time, in my experience, those people are more than willing to sit down and say, yeah, we got a few extra minutes, 4 rounds, go back off. Let's crack it open and look at it, and you'll learn more things about, limited in general and also deck building. And not to get too much on the tangent before we stop talking about egos and, not having to be right all the time, but limited, like we talked about earlier, is going to be featured shortly in our Red Eye Fights segment, and it's one of my favorite formats. But it also helped me become a better deck builder because it forced me to build decks out of cards I didn't have and didn't know a lot about. So keep that in mind too when you're thinking about going to your local game store. Maybe you're a commander player who's goes out there and there's maybe only 1 or 2 other commander players at the table that night. Sign up for a draft. Let those people explain it to you, because most LGSs that I've had the pleasure to deal with have always sat down and said, hey, is this your first draft? And if so, all the players at the table are going to help you get, they're going to help you get a good understanding of how draft works, You may not know all the ins and outs of how little strategies work inside that draft environment, but they'll help you understand how the flow of things are supposed to go. But not being able to admit that you're wrong is a downfall, and it's a downfall that will continually hold you back from, first and foremost, having fun. If you can never admit that you're wrong, or you can never admit that someone is better than you, you'll never enjoy the game because you'll always get beat. Because at some point, you have to have a little helping hand. You have to pick up little things here and there. It's kind of like pulling from everybody around the table. You may pick up something from a brand new player. If you're a fairly experienced player, you may see a brand new player playing a synergy you didn't know about. Use that. And then you may be sitting across from a veteran player that's been playing for years, and they're obviously going to know things you don't because they've had more time and energy put into it. So don't let your ego outweigh your skill level. Don't let your ego outweigh your skill level. Learn from those people. Admit when somebody has some more experience than you, and move on about your day. Open those doors. Let people in, because most people who play Magic, in my experience, again, I may be one of those lucky people who just are surrounded by good people, but most of them want to make friends. Most of them want to reach out and play new games of Magic. It gets a little stagnant when we talk about, playing Magic with your pod, and sometimes maybe your pod just hasn't had the chance to go out and build new decks. Maybe y'all's budget's kind of tight right now and you're not able to really explore deck building adventurously. At that point, it is one of the best things you can do on one of the nights y'all can't get together. Go out to your local game store, sit down, play some random games, make friends. Magic is a social game. It's meant to put you in a position where you sit across from a person, learn how to make light conversation with that person, and just have fun playing the game. A lot of times, I don't pay as much attention to my win rate as I do what kind of connection I make with people. What kind of friendships am I harboring, whatever that word is. What kind of friendships am I bonding? What kind of bonds am I making at that local game store that when I go back and sit for another sealed, that I may be able to get to sit across from them, like, hey, how have you been doing? This, and this. What do you think about this archetype in this? And you learn and you get better, and those people feel more comfortable sitting down and talking to you. Personally, that's how it's been for me. And then, let's say you've listened to all this so far, right? You go in, you don't let your ego outweigh everything, you open up the doors and everything. Don't forget that this person sitting across from you may be that undefeated player who always goes undefeated. Tell that person thank you. After being receptive, make sure you let them know that you're appreciative of it. Don't continue on your streak and win the rest of your matches and then not go back and say, hey, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your pre-release and helping me build this deck. I ended up winning my next 3 matches. I really appreciate that. And it goes right into, sometimes people feel not as good as somebody else by having to accept help. And that's not the case. Don't ever feel like, because everybody has to start somewhere, especially for my new players out there. Anybody who's new to Magic at this, who've never played or who have played very little, please accept that help, because, again, when my play group was young, I was one of those players. I remember specifically, we sat at a Commander game, and we had literally just started playing again, and I was playing Is It Spells Matters deck, and I happened to have a really old card from my childhood floating around that I just happened to find in my collection that I wanted in there. And if anybody's familiar with the card, it's called Visitrdrix. Visitrdrix was a rabid vampire-looking bunny that just always spoke to me. I loved the art on the card. And we got done with this game of Commander, and the guy sitting next to me was like, hey, can I see your deck? So, and in about 5 minutes, he had a pile that was half of my deck, and half of a pile he said, you need to remove all of these cards, and right on top was Visitrdrix. And I was like, no, I'm good. Nah, this is one of my pet cards. I'm going to play this card whether you like it or not. And not saying you shouldn't play pet cards, because as a casual, it's really good to have cards in a deck just because you enjoy them, whether it's the artwork, whether it's the mechanic that you really like, play those cards. but in a sense of wanting to become a better Magic player or being new to the game and wanting to understand more about how the game works, I really should have broke it down and listened and said, okay, maybe I'll build a meme deck, or I'll build a deck that is just based off of this particular artist's artwork, and that's where I can express myself that way through Commander. But for that deck, what my player beside me was trying to tell me was to be better. If you want to be a better player, this card doesn't work in that deck. Overall, being receptive and being able to open those doors is a very difficult thing for people to do. It's something that plagued me as a new player, and I wholeheartedly feel like it held me back for quite a long time at becoming a better player. Because we all go through that phase where we want to be better players in general. Maybe before you become that casual player who's just like, hey, I just want to have fun. You still want to get to a certain point in your skill set that you feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm just having fun now. I'm just having a good time. The best way to get out there and face it is to face it head on. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to sit down across from somebody, open up your deck and say, hey, what can I do better? Have you ever seen this before? Is this something you've ever seen? Let that person in, understand to take in that information, and really just face that fear head on. Face that ego. Don't let that stop you from being a good player and being a good casual. This is in the Casuals Toolkit. This is something that's going to help you become a better player and overall be a better human. Be an LGS star, I like to call them. We find out that a lot of people who play in these LGSs are people just like us who are all casuals who just love to go play the game and play the game for years with no admiration of winning Friday Night Magic or even playing in a big sealed tournament or playing in a tournament period, I should say. Those people had to be receptive at some point to get comfortable enough with the game to understand how the game works, how they could be a better player, and it makes the player opposite of you feel so much better when they've helped somebody out, when they've taught you something. Now, switching gears for just a minute, I've talked about being receptive, and I've talked about you yourself as a player doing the things you can to become a better player and a better casual. But what if you have problems at your local game store? Again, if you're anywhere in the Greenville, North Carolina area, within 2 hours of Greenville, North Carolina, please take some time and go visit the Blue Ox games in Greenville, North Carolina, because it is one of the best gaming environments I've ever had the pleasure to be at. And I'm fortunate in that sense that there's a lot of good players, a bunch of nice people. Again, that all their employees are super friendly. All of them have always helped out during gameplay. The owner is also an amazing individual. He helps us out constantly. He actually cares about his players. You may not be in that position. Your local game store may be a little under the weather, so to speak. Maybe the players there aren't quite as forthcoming with their information. Maybe they're a little more competitive than you are. First and foremost, I want you to try and make it known that you want to befriend these people, because a lot of times those people don't have a ton of Magic Gathering friends, because if they are like that, it's kind of difficult to sit down and play a game with them. But furthermore, if you're having those kind of issues, email us at nytcast@gmail.com. Maybe some of my personal experiences or our personal experiences as a play group can help you on that path to helping your local game store out. Maybe it's something where you need to sit down with that individual and say, hey, your stuff's really not lining up with ours, and we're not really having a fun time. Or maybe it's even something where you have to get an employee involved, where it says, look, he's making gameplay miserable for us. We can't even have fun. We may have to stop coming here and go down the road to another game store, or just start meeting at a restaurant somewhere and playing, because we feel so uncomfortable with this player. Make it a point to help this person become, like we have here at Mr. Trigger, help them become a better casual. You may not be the person to help them become a better player, because they may feel like they know a little bit more than you, but help them become a better casual. pass our word along. We want more people to just be able to sit down and have fun playing the game of Magic. So that's kind of moving us on into the end of the episode today. We really just wanted to sit down, talk a little bit about our casuals toolkit, add that attitude, add that goal of being receptive into your toolkit so you can become a better player overall and not be so strong-headed or be so headstrong about certain things about the game of Magic. It helps you know the game better, helps you build better decks, and at the end of the day, it harbors friendships. It lets you become stronger with your play group and stronger with strangers out in the open. I know I've made a lot of mentions of LGSs tonight, and a lot of that's because, I just went and played in a pre-release. But apply this to your play group. Let your play group tell you some things that'll help you. And that might even be harder than doing it with strangers because you feel like you're in a pod and you have to compete. Let each other help each other. We talked about in episode 2, watching somebody else go off and being just as excited for them. That happens a lot when you actually open the door and let that happen. Imagine if you were sitting across from that person and that person said, no, don't help me. I'm fine, I can do it on my own. You kind of become standoffish at that point. Open up. Let your pod mates help you. Let strangers help you at your LGS. And then apply that to your everyday life. Again, here at Mr. Trigger, we want you to be better players, but we also want you to be better humans. It's one of our main goals here at Mr. Trigger. So moving right to the end of the episode, again, thank you for all the social media likes. Currently, we've kind of found out Facebook is our primary format. If you want to like us on Instagram or follow us on Instagram, it is #MYTcast on Instagram. Just know we're doing most of our social media stuff on Facebook due to the ease, and I think the availability seems a little bit better for the general public. So be sure to go like us on Facebook. And again, thank you for everyone who already has done that. And thank you for listening to this episode. Pretty soon we'll have some more contributors on the episode. I know everybody probably missed Don from episode 2, but we plan on having even more people from our play group on. While we talk about Don real quick, again, you may notice that we didn't have any intro music. Don't be mad at him. Again, he's been under a lot of stuff going on lately. If you haven't already gone and liked him, go like him on Don Saul's Music on Facebook. And again, I'd like to thank him for all the help he's done thus far, helping us, and he will have that intro music for us. And he'll be contributing more in the future on the podcast. So without further ado, I think we're to the very end of the episode. Again, don't forget to like us on social media, primarily Facebook. And if you're not already, subscribe and like our stuff on YouTube. And make sure you ring our bell on YouTube so you get notified when any new videos post. Thank you all once again. And I hope everybody has a great evening. And don't forget, have fun and keep missing those triggers.